What is up, everybody, and welcome to the All-NBA Show, powered by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com/AllNBA. I'm your host, Adam Mares. I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Tim Legler. Legs, I hope you enjoyed your weekend. How'd it go?
I had a good weekend, man. Just spending time with some friends visiting from out of town, so it was kind of nice. I've been traveling so much; it was good to be home for 3 days in a row. That has not happened to me in a long time. So I was,
and it won't happen
glad.
to you again. And it won't happen to you again until July, probably, as we are officially in the home stretch, final day of March. We get into the month of the playoffs here starting tomorrow. And we got a full show for you today. We're going to talk about the Suns imploding. Man, I can't wait to get to that one because it really, really ridiculous weekend for them. The Warriors also got a win without Kuminga. We're going to predict the standings in both the East and the West, how they're going to finish out, and then preview a very good slate of games tonight. But let's start, Legs, with the brawl. The Malice in the Palace, part 2.
Oh, man.
Okay, not quite, not quite. But sort of, kind of. So the Wolves are in Detroit in Minnesota to take on the Timberwolves. And in this game, there was already no Cade Cunningham. And there was a little skirmish, kerfuffle. I don't know what you want to call it, but a little back and forth between some of the guys that ended in Isaiah Stewart, as of course, because always Isaiah Stewart, and Ron Holland, also a bit of an instigator, getting tossed out along with Marcus Sasser, Naz Reid, Dante DiVincenzo, JB Bickerstaff, and assistant coach Pablo Prigioni. So I'm just going to start. We got to start with the brawl, I guess, before we even get into the game. What did you make of this? Like, what was the first thought when you saw this, that this took place?
So I didn't see it, and I got a notification in my phone. So I'm like, oh, man, that's a lot of players. So I was like, man, what happened? Like, this must have been, Royal Rumble, WWE type stuff, man. I was let down. Not that I want to see anybody, getting their jaw broken or anything like that. But when you see seven ejections because of a, quote, fight, I wanted to see a lot more than that, man. There wasn't much to that. There was a whole lot of woofing and some shoving. It got into the stands, which is always unfortunate because that can get really dangerous when it gets into the stands. But all in all, like I said, we talked about it this morning. We were texting each other. I'm like, you can't label that a fight. It's not a fight. First of all, you can't have a fight unless the punch is thrown. Do you agree? You can't call it a fight.
And I don't know if I agree with that, but it's got to be some good wrestling moves if it's going to be called a fight. This was not.
Wait, so if you're at a bar, and two dudes get into it, and there's a whole lot of chest shoving, and one guy falls to the ground, and then it's over. Would you call that a fight? I wouldn't call that a fight. You want to call it a scuffle, a skirmish, a heated disagreement. How about that?
There was a heated disagreement in the Pistons-Wolves game. Okay.
Hey, look. Like I said, nobody wants to see anything crazy, man. But like fights were different. 80s, 90s, early 2000s. There were things that really escalated to the point that there were just absolutely wild scenes. This wasn't that. It's crazy to have that many guys, ejected from the game, and including, Bickerstaff and Prigioni going at it, screaming at each other, the head coach and an assistant coach for the other team. You don't see that very often at the end of one of these things. But here's the thing. I think JB Bickerstaff has sort of set the tone with some of this stuff for his team.
I like it. Good take.
Okay. I think that there has been, and I don't know why he's been so, I have a lot of respect for JB Bickerstaff. I've been on the record all year as saying what an incredible job he has done with this team, and the turnaround that they've had in one season is incredible. It's one of the biggest turnarounds in 1 year in NBA history, what they have done with this team. They were 4-39 at the midway point of the season last year, 4-39. with a different coach, obviously. And now you look up, they got a chance to get the 5 seed legitimately. So I'm going to give him all his praise, but at the same time, he's had like this mantra for a while now about the lack of respect that he feels they get. And you saw he had a complete meltdown in a press conference. How long ago was that? A week ago, 2 weeks ago, when he's pounding the table and he was demanding respect, and it cost him a lot of money, and he knew it. He didn't care because I guess he thinks they're getting the short end of the stick on calls from the officials. I also think it's tied into, he thinks they're not getting enough respect from guys like us or not necessarily us specifically, but in the media. He doesn't think that people are taking them seriously enough. It's all well and good, man. At the end of the day, they're going to have to go prove it. It's pretty soon. Playoffs will be here before you know it. And they're going to have to go prove it on what kind of team that they think they are. But I think he has sort of elevated the temperature in that locker room with these guys. And I think it contributed to what happened last night, in my opinion.
I like this take because I think coaches really set the tone, oftentimes, not always, but set the tone for what kind of personality your team is going to have. And to your point, Detroit is new to this level, right? I mean, their biggest turnaround we've seen in a long time in terms of win-loss profile. But with that, there can be we're good. We've already accomplished our mission. We're all the way up to the 5 seed. What a turnaround. Everybody pat yourself on the back. And I like this idea of like, no, we're going to be tough. We have to believe, we have to demand respect. But what I'll say is, if we had to rank teams most likely to get into a brouhaha, I like somebody put brouhaha in the chat. Maybe that's what it was. If you were to rank teams most likely, I think Detroit and Minnesota would be in the top 3 or 4. So because both of them play with, I think, a level of toughness and physicality and an edge to them. And so part of me looks at this and says, yes, no punches were thrown. Some guys are probably going to get suspended a game or whatever. That's the new NBA. But at the same time, I almost say like, hey, we're 2 weeks out from the playoffs. These two teams, they're sharpening their edge.
Yeah, no, and both of these teams have sort of that mentality, and then they want to be defensive-minded teams first. That's ultimately going to probably determine their success, to whatever extent of success they have in the postseason. They're both going to be kind of coming from different, similar places, like on the road immediately in the playoffs, assuming Minnesota, whatever, escapes the play-in. If they end up in the play-in, whatever it may be, they're going to have tough paths. You're going to have to go on the road. You have to win a road game and then hold home court to win a series. So they're going to do that defensively. That's where they hang their hat, both of these teams. They both have one star offensive player, like legitimate star offensive player, Cade Cunningham and Anthony Edwards. And then they've got these teams built around them that are defensive-minded teams. And, on a given night, you're going to get production from certain guys. And if you get it to a certain extent, you're going to win games because your defense is going to be there every night. Well, they're both kind of the same mindset. So you're going to have a physical game when they get together. Again, I don't know, Adam, that there would be any suspensions associated with this if it didn't get into the crowd.
Yeah.
I think that's where the league is going to probably take a firmer stance on this. If you just had a bunch of dudes shoving each other around on the court and it stayed in the lane, and even if a couple guys go to the ground and then it gets separated without any punches being thrown, I'm not sure there are any suspensions. I think they're just ejections. The fact that it was at the feet of fans, like in the lap of some fans, basically, and you saw one fan like reaching over trying to like keep the peace, and he basically got his arm shoved by one of the players. There's going to be something come down. Yeah. I think it was a lot. It was a lot of bark, very little bite with what this ended up being. But I do think, to your point, it's about the mentality of the two teams, and they want to be tough, and they want to show that they're tough because defense is their identity. When you get two teams fighting for their lives in a lot of respect, seeding, and for Minnesota's case, just to get in, you could have tempers flare. And that's what happened. And it ended up, I think, affected Detroit a lot more than Minnesota. But Minnesota was dominant in this game in the second half.
Yeah. And that really is what happened in this one. It was an important game for both teams. Every win, every loss matters a lot for both of them as they're trying to claw a little bit higher in the standings. And Detroit, who's already without Cade, you lose that many guys, and they had nothing left. They got blown out in that second half, and this became a laugher. Do you have any other notes about this game or any meaningful notes about it?
Well, to me, it was not really even about the game because the game ended up getting derailed by what happened between the two teams. I think, though, I'm looking at both of these teams. Detroit is the team that has captured kind of my imagination now and what they could represent in the playoff series. And it's going to be very interesting to see how they finish this out. With what's going on with Damian Lillard, Detroit now has a really, really good chance to get to 5. I'm not sure they're going to be able to catch Indiana. We're going to talk more about that later. But you're probably going to be in a 5 seed going on the road against a team like probably in Indiana. And the way Detroit plays, we talk about a great opportunity to put a stamp on the season that you've had. And even if they lose the series, man, you play Indiana 6-7 tough games and you lose that in the first round. I think Detroit has opened so many eyes on what their future could be. They've completely recalibrated what everybody's going to think of this team going forward because of the emergence of Cade Cunningham and because of the overall team success they've had predicated on their defense. They're now a factor in the Eastern Conference, I think, going forward. So that's really – so this one game, it's a 19-point loss, but to me, the fight derailed what the game ultimately could have been.
A little leg story time. Do you have a brawl that you were either a part of or that you just witnessed, you were on the court for or in the game for, that you recall that comes to mind?
Man, I'm sure there was a bunch in the years I played in the league. One that stood out to me was I was playing in Utah was a fight that broke out between Larry Krystowiak got into a fight. I don't remember who he fought. I remember this, though. Is why it's an interesting story. So it was at the far end of the court. I think it was even a preseason game. And they got into it all the way at the other end of the floor in front of the opposing bench. And at that time, leaving the bench was like, okay. so like we all kind of saw it happen and immediately like you're going to pay a fine, but you're not going to get a suspension. So like, I just remember like the entire bench just hauling ass to get down to the other end of the floor. It was similar to what you see in baseball where they run in from the dugout. It's like the most ridiculous waste of time ever. By the time those guys get in there, it's over. This was kind of the same thing. We only had to run 94 feet, but by the time we got there, pretty much broke it up. But this was what was funny. Karl Malone paid everybody's fine that came off the bench.
Wow.
And I remember him addressing it at like shoot around the next day, where basically he said he was going to make sure by looking at the film that everybody came off the bench.
That's hilarious.
And that he was going to pay their fines, man. So like, it was like the mentality around it, right? I'll never forget that. It's all about, man, you better have your teammates back. And I don't remember how great the fight was. I don't recall any massive real haymakers being thrown in a game that I was playing in or a part of. Stuff like that happened all the time. I actually probably saw better fights in practice. I saw some legitimate big time fights where like guys were throwing punches, ended up on the ground and like had to be separated by a bunch of people. I saw that multiple times in my career.
Man, so I just looked up the fight, by the way. Larry, you said Krystowiak and Sherman Douglas. It was Sherman Douglas for the Celtics who he grabs. And then, you're right. It was like baseball. Everybody kind of clears. And I love the idea of Karl Malone, like going to the tape to make sure like nobody was on the bench. Like, hold on, let me make sure not one person.
Right. So then I'm sitting there and look, at that time, it's very early in my career. I don't have any damn money. It's like I'm not saying to cross my mind to stay, but it's like, damn. You kind of do take a glance around like, okay, let's go. Let's get down there and see what's going on.
That's funny, man. I know producer James has a trivia for us, though, Legs. He prepped us for.
Okay.
Yeah, we got I got curious after seeing the 7 people ejected. So who has the most ejections of all time? It's all players I got the top 10 in front of me. See if you guys can get it however many you can.
I think number one's obvious. I think.
I got an answer.
For number one, who do you think?
I don't know. He's got to be somewhere in the top 10, but I don't know if he's number one. Rasheed Wallace has to be.
I think he's one.
Rasheed Wallace, number one, 29 ejections.
Boom. Former teammate, actually. Great story on Rasheed. So we drafted him. I was in Washington. I think he was the 4th pick overall. Massive talent, man. Massive upside. 6'11", could do everything on the court. Great defender. And we had him for exactly 1 year in Washington. And he had a very good year. He actually hit the game-winning shot in the rookie game at the All. It was a great year for us in Washington because He hit the game-winning shot in the rookie game at All-Star Weekend. Juwan Howard played in his only All-Star game of his career, and I won the three-point shootout. So we were represented well in All-Star Weekend with that team. They thought that Rasheed was emotionally unable to be controlled, and that he had a lot of texts even that year. I think he had a bunch of texts his rookie year. And they panicked, and they overreacted to it. And they traded a guy, man, that was that talented, that big in a league where size was really important. Everybody played two bigs. We had 5 legitimate big-time front court players on our roster, and they gave him exactly 1 year, and they gave up on it and he was 19 years old, and they didn't think, oh, well, and look, as it turns out, he was very emotional throughout his entire career. But to me, you don't give up on that kind of talent after 1 year for that reason, which is what they did. They ended up trading him to Portland for Rod Strickland. And we went with a smaller, older guard and got rid of a much younger, bigger guy. But so that led down this path of what you're talking about here. I didn't know that he was going to be the number one answer. I just knew that. Is he the all-time leader in technical fouls? It seems like those two things would go together. I know he's up there.
I think he's got to be, because he had that one season where I think it was half the games he got a ticket, or more than half. So he's got to be the leader. Maybe let's not do the top 5 or top 10, but maybe the top 5, because I think Dennis Rodman and Draymond Green would be two of my other guesses.
Draymond Green, number 2. Dennis Rodman tied for 9th.
Oh,
wow. Okay.
9th.
I got it.
Okay.
All right. Who was the other one? I just still to the tip of my tongue. Oh, how about Meta World Peace? Ron Artest.
Oh, yeah.
Not in the top 10, surprisingly.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's surprising.
Yeah, you would think it's a Bad Boys Pistons player, so I would guess maybe Lambeer.
Lambeer just outside of the top 10 as well.
Oh, man.
I
don't know who else was in the top 5.
Last 2 in the top 5, you played against, Legs. You played against both of these guys.
Charles Oakley?
So close.
Charles.
He played with Charles Oakley. Charles Oakley is at 12, number 12.
Who on that team? It wasn't Patrick Ewing. Anthony Mason?
Anthony Mason tied for 4th.
Wow.
With Charles Barkley.
All right. Then you get Chuck ejected. That makes sense as well.
Oh, Charles. That makes sense. Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Good job, guys.
From ejections to implosions, the Phoenix Suns' last 3 games. Do you remember less than a week ago, we were talking about a 4-game win streak for the Suns? Have they figured it out? There's a good vibe over there. Well, since then, 132-102 Boston. All right, Boston's really good. That's a tough one. 124-109 Minnesota. Oof, starting to get ugly. And then 148-109 Houston. And Legs, I actually watched this game because I sat down thinking, I want to prepare for tomorrow. I'll get ahead of it. I'll watch this game live. This was one of the most sad, pathetic performances I've watched this season, because the Phoenix Suns, they had 20 turnovers in a row, what it felt like. And half of them were just of the I'm just going to loll the ball over to someone. Oh, it's another turnover for a fast break dunk. It was such a quit performance out of Phoenix in that game. I don't even think Houston played well, and they won by 40 points. What happened to the Phoenix Suns?
To your point, first of all, 34 points conceded off turnovers. That's about as high a number as you're ever going to see in an NBA game. So, all right, let's go back a little bit. You mentioned the 4-game winning streak. In the last 2 of those games, they were good wins. It was Cleveland and Milwaukee.
Yeah. Yep.
Right? And then here we go. And I was sitting courtside for the Boston Celtics in town. And they come in, and you're like, all right, let's see what this 4-game winning streak really means. Well, we found that out in about 6 minutes. Boston hit 10 threes in the first quarter, and the first 6 or 7 of them, there was nobody within 10 feet of these guys. It was literally as if the Phoenix Suns were playing the Boston Celtics and they had never seen tape on the Boston Celtics. That's the extent to which they were late and confused and, not understanding the level of readiness and effort it was going to take and you let the Boston Celtics, and by the way, Jason Tatum didn't play in that game. All right. So you don't have your best player, and the extent to which Boston gutted them in the first quarter of that game. And, then Phoenix kind of came, it was a 5-point game at one point in the second quarter. And then there was a run going into the locker room, and then it was just an absolute onslaught in the third quarter, game over. 5 to 25 points in about 3 minutes. I'm telling you, Adam, I think that game was so eye-opening, and like it was almost like a giant bucket of cold water was thrown on the Phoenix Suns. Because it was like these 4 wins were a total mirage.
Right.
Because they're soft, they don't play hard enough, they don't care enough, they're not connected to each other in any way. They're not connected to their head coach. And yet here they are with a 4-game winning streak. And so I'm not saying anybody was like totally bought in, but at the same time, you're like, man, they're playing some of their best basketball right now, and they're fighting for their life. You know, hey, if you're going to get hot, now's the time to do it. I think the Celtics, what they did to them was so emasculating, it's led to what we've seen since.
Wow.
2
really?
absolutely non-competitive games. I think the Celtics did it to them. They cut him off at the knees. They never let him in that game. And it was like they were hypnotized and someone snapped their fingers and they came to and they realized who they really were after that game. That's the extent to which their shoulders dropped, their body language is terrible. And it was like we were right back where we were before. And obviously the last 2 games have proven that, because, you know, there's 2 blowout losses, but what happened last night was just, and then Durant goes down on top of it. Who knows if or when we're going to see Kevin Durant again.
It was a bad one, right?
It's a total implosion. It's an implosion. You said the right word at the start of this.
Well, you talked about ankle sprains when we watched the Jalen Brunson one. You predicted that one would be a long one. This was a big ankle sprain, I thought, from KD too. It wasn't just a little tweak. He rolled that thing 90 degrees. And so now you look at it 2 weeks to go. They're 2 games back in the standings. And all right, let's just go through it all. So no KD coming up probably for a little while. But the team looked like they quit. Not like that, oh, they're out of sorts. They got to really get on the same page. It looked like a team that didn't care. Because that run, you know, when a team scores 8 in a row, 12 in a row, 14 in a row, if you care, there's a little, well, I'm just going to get fouled. I'm going to go to the rim. I'm going to do something. I'm going to foul somebody. I'm going to slow this game down. They didn't care. It was just like, they were like, man, how much time's left in this game? So now you have those 2 factors into it. And the fact that you're 2 games behind, you have to make up 2 and 7. I just think the Suns, I'll almost call it that they are cooked, just because I don't see the Sacramento Kings were trying to gift them, by the way, the 10 seed. The Kings themselves have been imploding, but Phoenix out imploded them.
They allowed 18 made threes and 58% 3-point shooting to a team that is their primary weakness as a team. Their lack of punch and firepower from the 3-point line. Like, you have to almost try to allow the weaker 3-point shooting teams in this league to have those kind of nights. Because if you're just in the area, there's a reason that those teams struggle from the 3-point line. They don't have pure shooters on their roster. Not enough of them. So those guys need more time. So in a night you see a team shoot 58% from the 3-point line and make 18 threes, it's because they had all the time in the world. Just like Boston did, who happens to be the best 3-point shooting team in the league. And they had time too. So it just goes to show you that what you saw for whatever it is, Durant got red hot during that winning streak. Booker was playing great. He was averaging like double-digit assists during that winning streak. Ryan Dunn was playing great during that winning streak. He basically doubled his scoring average or tripled it for that 4-game stretch. Colin Gillespie was giving them nice minutes, and he was starting for them and giving them some energy and some life because he's very popular with his teammates. Man, oh man, I'm telling you, the Boston, I blame what's happened the last 2 games on what happened in the first half of the Boston game. I really do. They were hit with such a punch at the start of that game. They realized it was like almost, and I said it to Dave Pasch during one of the breaks on the game. I said, these 2 teams it's like 2 boxers in different weight classes. Like that's what it felt like to me. An unfair fight. And I think it was so demoralizing to the Celtics that's led to these last 2 games and culminating with what happened last night. That's to me is rock bottom. 148 points to the Houston Rockets. Total ineptitude and lack of care defensively. And on top of it, now Durant's out. And I agree with you. That was a bad one. There was a lot of force generated on that drive. His ankle went all the way over. His outside his ankle touched the court. And look, guys that are really like thin like that, though, it's weird. They don't swell as much. I've seen guys with that kind of body frame come back quicker. because they don't swell for some reason as much as other guys. So we'll see what happens with Durant. But look, man, the way this is going, Adam, is there a ton of incentive? Honestly, do you think Kevin Durant sitting there killing himself to get back to this bunch of fighters? Get back to my dogs. Come on, man. Like the way this team has played the last 3 games, I agree with you. It's like total wave the white flag. Let's just get this over with. Their season is now, they're going to have U-Hauls in the parking lot before their last game, ready to get out of town.
They're 2 games back. They play Milwaukee at Milwaukee tomorrow, and then they play Boston at Boston on Friday. That might be the end of it. If you lose those 2 games, Sacramento picks up just one of their next 2. It might be out of reach even before then. And then, by the way, after that, at New York, then home against the Warriors and Thunder. Like, their schedule does not get easier. Speaking of the Warriors, though, they get a win by 42 points over the San Antonio Spurs. All right, it's tanking season. It's March. We understand these types of blowouts happen. But, Legs, there was no Jonathan Kuminga. Just no Jonathan. He played 7 minutes in this game. And the Warriors had 42 assists, 21 three-pointers. I've been speculating about this, that I think when I watch Kuminga, as talented as he is, the team just seems to get the ball moving better when he's not on the court. Well, he's not on the court for most of this game, and they end up having this blowout. Is there anything to it, or is this just a blowout against a bad team?
I see where you're going with this. Man, you really, really, really have problems with Jonathan Kuminga. I didn't realize the extent to which you had problems with Kuminga. You really think, man, this is good. You're going to lay this in the lap of Jonathan Kuminga.
I'm just noticing. I'm just noticing something. I mean, I'm just pointing it out.
All right. I'm going to say, all right. So, 7 minutes. I mean, he played 7 minutes in the game, 1 for 2 from the field, 1 rebound, 4 points. So he participated, but to your point, he wasn't like a factor for them. I personally think they need him. They need to figure out a way that he can blend in more. I just think that there's very few guys on their team that can give you, 14, 15 points in a playoff game just because they're athletic. Kuminga can. I agree with a lot of stuff you say. Like his IQ for the game, his reads, fitting into that offense. I think at times it looks kind of clunky, but I also think he makes up for some of it, but just making plays that nobody else on their roster can. So I think they need him ultimately. But I think more than anything else, this was just, you're getting the Spurs at this time of the year. They're not playing for anything. They made that determination a while ago. Once they got the news about Victor Wembanyama, that was that. And they're just kind of playing out the string. I mean, you had, they didn't have a single starter play more than 22 minutes. Stephon Castle played 22 minutes. So, and they don't even, I don't even know if these guys are like, quality starters enough anyway. I think it was more about the Spurs, where they are at this time of the year and what they're thinking about, than it was the Warriors without Kuminga. Like it's something to read into that and some sort of a statement made about how they're going to proceed going forward. I'm going to keep an eye on it, though. I'm going to keep an eye on that situation and see if Steve Kerr has similar thinking to what you're putting out there right now.
Well, he fell on his tailbone. I don't know if you saw it, almost reminiscent of Steph Curry, because he just went to the hole hard, got hit, and landed on that tailbone. So who knows, how long he's going to be out for. But it's just, this is something I talked about when he came back, because he was gone when Jimmy Butler arrived. They went on that run. And I just know from watching the Warriors, they are a ball movement team. They are a read and react team. And he is just one of the guys that doesn't seem to read the court in that same way. And then defensively, same thing. They're a team that executes and makes tough rotations. He's so talented. But he misses a game or two, you're going to have 4 or 5 games to try to acclimate him. It hasn't worked in the 4 or 5 games prior to this. So it's just, if nothing else, a big question mark. It would be a little bit crazy, but this Warriors team just seems to play a little bit better without him. You guys, let us know in the comments, by the way, if you agree or disagree. Legs is not into this take, but it's just something I'm keeping my eye on. And it's something that'll be interesting as this playoff start. All right, let's take a break. On the other side, we're going to look at the playoff standings and try to project where we think there's going to be movement, or if there's going to be movement before they all begin here in 2 weeks. All right, let me tell you, though, first about Monarch Money. Finances can be messy and confusing. Monarch Money acts like your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control so you can stop earning and start growing. There's a lot of things to track in your busy life, especially if you're busy like me or like Legs, always on the go doing a million things. Sometimes expenses can get out of hand. How much am I spending on this or that expense? Am I spending too much eating out? Am I saving enough? Am I reaching a goal? Well, it can help you with the budgeting aspect of it. How about tracking things? Maybe you have subscriptions you didn't realize you had, and that's costing you money. Can help you with that. And then your investments, they're on all these different places. You got to check 4 or 5 different sites, meet with your personal planner. Well, Monarch Money can help you keep track of all of those things and help you set up plans so that you can reach and accomplish your short-term and long-term goals. The finance tool people actually love. It joined over 1 million households. It was named Wall Street Journal's best budgeting app of 2025, the top recommended personal finance app by users and experts with over 30,000 5-star reviews. Get control of your overall finances with Monarch Money. Use the code ALLNBA at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with the code ALLNBA. Get ready for the season ahead with quality shades built to last. Our friends at Shady Rays have you covered with premium polarized shades that won't break the bank. Shady Rays is an independent sunglass company offering world-class products rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. Their shades have durable frames and crystal clear optics, making them the perfect choice for all outdoor adventures. They have hundreds of options to choose from, so you're bound to find the perfect pair to match your style. I've got navigators, aviators, and a handful of other ones. They also have like ski goggles, winter goggles, all types of stuff. So certainly whatever style you're into, they are going to have it for you at shadyrays.com. And exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays is giving out their best deal of the season. If you head to shadyrays.com and use that code AC35 for 35% off polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. All right, back here, segment 2 of the All-NBA show, myself and Tim Legler. We are live this week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, so set your calendars appropriately. We do have some great games coming up both tonight and tomorrow, so there's going to be plenty for us to talk about. But today, let's get into the standings because we're 2 weeks out, Legs, and now it's time to start to squint and try to see how this is going to shake up. We'll start in the Eastern Conference. Cleveland, they are locked to be number 1. 4 games up. Technically have not clinched it, but they're 4 games up. They've only lost 15 all year. Let's pencil them in. Boston Celtics are locked into that 2 spot because they are 8 games up on the Knicks. The Knicks are pretty much locked into the 3 spot, 4 games up on the Pacers. And then the Pacers are kind of locked into their spot at number 4 because they're 2 games up on Detroit. So far, do you agree that those teams seem to be locked in 1, 2, 3, and 4?
100%. Yeah.
Okay. So then after that's where it gets interesting. Detroit has now a 1-game lead, 1.5 game lead over the Milwaukee Bucks. That's the one where you could see some movement. You threw out the idea that Detroit could catch Indiana only 2 games back. But the Milwaukee piece of this with just 1 game remaining, how do you see that shaking out?
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons, look, Indiana, Detroit, I think, needed to basically, by this point, with these remaining games, probably be tied with Indiana in the loss column to have a shot at it. The fact that they're 2 back in the loss column and they've got the 4th hardest schedule remaining in the league, that's going to make it, I think, too hard to catch them. But look, I think it comes down to this for me. Milwaukee, the Damian Lillard component. I mean, and that's what it comes down to for me. I know Detroit's got a much more difficult schedule. Milwaukee's, I think, strength of schedule is 25th, so relatively easy. But here's the thing, Adam. This is pretty cool the way this works out. They play the last 2 games of the year.
2 times.
Back
both in Detroit.
To back. Detroit, Milwaukee.
Yeah.
Yeah, home and home, potentially for all the marbles and getting into the 5. So, look, I think, let me ask you this, first of all. How big of a difference do you think it is for a team to have to play Indiana as opposed to New York on the road in the first round? Do you think that's a significant difference? Or do you think there's not much difference at all and it really comes down to more which of those 2 teams plays New York or Indiana? What do you think? Is New York, assuming they get Brunson back, and I mean, this is really taking a long time. Like I told you it would when it happened. And this is longer even than I thought. And he's talking about hopefully I play before the playoffs now. Like that's the latest coming out of Jalen Brunson's camp. Like I hope I play before the playoffs. So assuming he comes back right before the playoffs, as long as he feels right physically, missing all of that time, do you worry about, hey, man, this guy might be rusty and inefficient. Maybe the Knicks are the team you'd rather play in the first round than Indiana. How do you feel about that?
The rust part of this is obviously a huge factor. How good is Jalen Brunson? He might not even be 100% with as late as it is. He'll be coming back. I think the bigger thing for me, though, is the familiarity. Indiana, Detroit, Milwaukee all just know each other so well. They've played each other a lot, especially Milwaukee and Indiana. I feel like they've played each other more than any two teams have played each other over the last year and a half or so. So almost weirdly in that one way, I think you would rather play the Knicks if you're Milwaukee.
Well, I think, look, I have the way I'm predicting this. I'm predicting Detroit holds on to the 5, even with a much harder schedule, and Milwaukee falls to 6 because of the absence of Lillard. I just think that that's going to be a very difficult thing to overcome.
Well, let's go through the schedule here. They play Phoenix tonight or tomorrow at home. Feel like that's a win. Phoenix is not putting up much fight, but you never know. At Philadelphia, they're in the tank. At Miami, again, should be a win. At New Orleans, they've been playing hard, even though they're kind of in the tank as well. Then you got Minnesota, then New Orleans again before those Detroit games. They're all winnable games. Milwaukee just has a very winnable schedule. The problem is they're not very good. So I hear you, but at the same time, you just go through that schedule and nothing scares you till the very, very end when you have those 2 games against Detroit. Whereas Detroit at Oklahoma City tonight, they've got Memphis, Sacramento, New York, and then the 2 Milwaukee games. Those are all pretty tough games.
Well, at least they got Memphis, Sac, and New York, Milwaukee 4 in a row at home before they would go on the road for that last game at Milwaukee. I mean, it's very likely going to come down to those last 2 games. You know, so look, if Detroit's got a 1-game lead when they play on April 11th at home, they win that game. They've iced it, right? I don't even know. So they guess that means they've played twice, right? So do you know what happened in those first 2 games? I didn't look that up.
I'm scrolling it right now. Let me see if I could find it. They lost to Milwaukee. Detroit lost to Milwaukee on December 3rd. And I can't find the other time that they played.
And they lost at Milwaukee November 13th.
Okay. So they're 0-2. They need both of them.
0-2. You got to win both. And even then, it might not be enough because then you start getting into
tiebreakers,
division record, and you get into conference record. So I haven't looked at that far ahead. I just think Detroit needs to have that 1-game cushion going into that home game, second to last game of the year against the Bucks, and they can ice it. This isn't about really believing in them a ton. I admire what they've done with their year, but I just think Milwaukee's going to they're a very inconsistent team, and you don't have Lillard. They were winning games primarily because their offense can be better than other teams on given nights when Lillard and Antetokounmpo both play really well. Take one of those guys out of the equation, I think it's a lot easier to game plan for them. So even though their schedule is easier, I still have a belief that Detroit's going to find a way to do this.
What's interesting to me about these top 6 teams is it almost feels like there's no tougher or easier route. You just said Detroit versus Indiana, Detroit versus New York. Do I really feel differently there for Detroit? They're both tough. Milwaukee versus the Knicks, Milwaukee versus the Pacers, I don't know. And then if you win and you advance to the next round, you're talking about, do you get the Cavs or do you get the Celtics in round 2? Like both of those to me are equally tough. So it will be interesting to see how teams play this out and what they prioritize.
Can I make one comment on that? Because I actually think I would rather play the Knicks than the Pacers under these current conditions if we get to that point. Number one, you'd have the Brunson factor. Who knows? I mean, like you said, maybe it's still bothering him, which I think would not be out of the question. Worst case, at best case, he's going to be rusty. That's a long period of time to miss. He hasn't really gotten even to the part of the season when the intensity really ramped up here over the last couple of weeks. So he's going to miss all of that lead up heading into the postseason. That's one reason. The other reason is I think, Adam, there's a lot of pressure on Tom Thibodeau.
Ooh.
And I think he's going to – I think you're going to feel that with the New York crowd and with the pressure of the New York media and the scrutiny of that. If they find themselves a little bit of a hole early in a series, I think you're going to feel that more in New York than you are in Indiana. And Rick Carlisle's navigated all of this. The guy has won a championship. I think that I would have a little bit more faith that the Pacers could navigate the pressure of the situation. I think it could build up to a real pressure cooker for the Knicks and Tom Thibodeau and how that affects what he does in game, certain situations. I don't know if he'll get fired if they lose in the first round, but I don't think it would be out of the question.
Man, that's wild to think. If you go to the play, and it's also kind of interesting because the Atlanta Hawks are a half game up on the Orlando Magic, who are 2 games up on the Bulls. and Miami Heat, who are both tied in the standings. All of these teams have sort of different incentives. Orlando clearly wants to be in the make it into the playoffs. They can catch the Atlanta Hawks, but then you have the Bulls Heat who are jockeying for that first home game. I think the Bulls would love their season to end with a playoff berth, with the run that they've had at the end here. So how do you think those Final Four shake out?
Yeah, look, and again, it's weird the way this is working out. Orlando and Atlanta play 2 more times. So they've got to play two times in the last 7 games. It's going to determine the whole thing. I kind of lean toward the Magic. I think the Magic are playing well right now. And again, they're a team hangs their hat defensively, and they're tough. And I think maybe part of it is a little bit of a bias. I haven't called an Atlanta Hawks game this year. I haven't seen them up close. I saw the Magic beat the Cavs and end that 16-game winning streak. And I was so impressed with their fight and toughness. And if they just get one of their role players to make some threes, or a couple of those guys to make 2 or 3 each on a given night, I think with the top talent they have and their defensive mindset, they play for Jamal Mosley. There's something about the Magic, man. I think that they are up for the fight and doing whatever it takes. And I witnessed it firsthand. And so I'll be the first to admit, maybe there's a little bit of bias there just because it's recency bias with me having just seen them and been so impressed with how hard they were willing to fight to win that game.
Unlike the previous matchups we were talking about where the Pistons and Bucks play each other twice in a row, the Hawks and Magic playing each other twice almost in a row, twice in the same week, and then that would set the stage for the play-in, almost makes this a little bit of a mini playoff series because you need to win the games. You're probably going to strategize quite a bit for those games, but then you go into a do or die play-in game, which will also carry its own strategy. So that'll have a little gamesmanship to them. And in a weird way, make for kind of a good 3-game mini series.
Yeah, and I think these next 3 games are going to determine this because the Orlando Magic host the Clippers. That's obviously not going to be an easy game, and the Clippers have been playing a lot better with Kawhi Leonard. Like that's not an easy one. If they win that game, it is at home. If they win that game, they go to San Antonio and Washington for 2 road games. That's 2 wins. It's got to be 2 wins. I mean, neither one of those teams are playing for anything, and they're showing you that they're not playing for anything. It's one thing for a team to be bad, not having meaningful games, but still, you got to show up and play. I don't know you have to show up and play against those 2 teams. So that should be 2 wins, and that would set the stage. If they win all 3, that's when they get Atlanta coming into Orlando. And if they win the first 3 to set that up, they probably have a good chance of taking care of it that night.
That's next Tuesday, by the way. So that's some good theater. The schedule makers did a good job this year. I don't know how they knew. If we go to the West Side, Oklahoma City, they're easily, obviously locked up number 1. But then you've got the Rockets with a 2-game.
Hold on. Wait a second. I got to stop you real quick. You didn't do the 9-10 in the East.
Oh, all right. Well, I threw it out there. I didn't know if you had a comment.
Here's why. Chicago, Miami are in a dead heat. Who do you like better?
Right now, Chicago.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I'm saying. Chicago's become this super interesting, fun team, man. And Josh Giddey put an exclamation point on it the other night with that half-court shot. But they're just all of a sudden they've come together, right here, right at the end of the year. So not only do I think they're going to finish 9th, they're going to win the 9-10. And then I think they've got a good shot of beating the loser of the 7-8, man. I think Chicago's got a real shot to get in.
I would love that to happen. I kind of like Atlanta, Orlando, and Chicago. I like all 3 of those teams. They've been fun to watch. You don't want to be the team, though, that loses that 7-8 and then has to play this Chicago Bulls team that just has this the basketball gods have shined a light upon them over this last couple of weeks. You don't want to face that because right now they have a crazy belief. So you know what? Who would have guessed, Legs? The East play-in actually interesting this year. Not always the case. Western Conference, Oklahoma City easily the number 1. Houston Rockets probably the number 2 because they are 2 games up on the Denver Nuggets. Then you have the Nuggets, Lakers, Grizzlies, Warriors. Man, every team in the West. You go down and it's 1 game separating every single team down. So I guess I'll just give you the whole conference here. How do you think it shakes out?
This is crazy. And I didn't just get lazy and go, you know what? I don't feel like looking into this. I actually looked into all these team schedules and just trying to figure this out. And I'm going chalk 1 through 10 as they sit here right now. First of all, I can't even believe with the Denver Nuggets at one point, as hot as they got, right, as much as it was like, wow, okay, here they come. The Lakers, when they first got Luka and they lost a couple, and then they looked so dominant. You got them out there. You got the Warriors adding Jimmy Butler, and they've been red hot. And none of those teams can catch the Houston Rockets, who, by the way, went through a really rough patch.
Yep.
At the same time that these teams were hot. Like that's when you were like, oh man, Houston, they're losing close games. They're coming back to earth. Well, they've turned that all around, winning 9 out of 10. So that makes me think they've got more staying power than we give them credit for. Because if you're off to this surprising start and then you hit that rough patch, a lot of times from that point on, man, some teams might go like 500 from that point on. And now they end up 5th, 6th, whatever they were dropping to. They re-established control of their team, and now they've won 9 out of 10, and they're going to end up with the 2 seed. And I just can't believe that they're going to pull this off, but they are. And I think that they deserve a lot of respect for that.
Their schedule's brutal, though. They play at Lakers tonight. That one will be a really tough one. Even though Lakers have been sliding, they'll figure it out. You got Utah, who's a gimme. Oklahoma City, who knows what Oklahoma City brings to that game. But then it's at Golden State, at the Clippers, at the Lakers, and then versus Denver at home. All of those games matter. I'm with you. I think they'll be the 2 seed. But once again, last game of the year, Rockets hosting Denver. That's another one that if you're within one game or, that could be the one that decides it. So
it really is amazing the way that the schedule makers have gotten like these matchups to line up here at the end of the year. Imagine if they come down to that last game of the – now, what do you know? You probably do. What's the head-to-head with Denver and Houston to this point?
Man, I'd have to look at this. I think Houston has beaten them, I know, at least once. It might be 1-1, actually, I believe. Yeah, because Denver beat them just last week. And so – I think it's 1-1, and that'll be the third game.
So they're only going to play 3 times. Like sometimes you only play a team 3 times. So that game, they could potentially be tied.
Be great.
Going in, and that game is for the 2 seed.
Yeah, I think that'd be great, man. That'd be phenomenal. Denver has an interesting one because their next opponent is tomorrow against Minnesota. Minnesota might be without a couple players. We'll see what suspensions come in. Naz Reid or Dante DiVincenzo. That would obviously change the complexion here. But Minnesota has owned Denver. Just like the Lakers needed to beat Denver because Denver had owned the Lakers and they needed to send a message. I think that game is so important to Denver. I don't think it's as important to Minnesota other than the standings. Every game's kind of important. But I think that game tomorrow night is going to tell me what I need to know about how the Nuggets will finish the year. They should win. And I think they need to win. If there's no Dante DiVincenzo and Naz Reid, they need to win comfortably because they need, in my opinion, to make a statement against that Timberwolves team who, oh, by the way, might be their first round matchup. So for me with Denver, I think they're going to hold on to the number 3, but I think Tuesday's night's game is going to be an inflection point for them.
I'm not sure they lose Naz. They haven't made any announcements, right? I'm not sure they lose Naz Reid. I think they're probably going to lose DiVincenzo.
That's a meaningful loss for them. I mean,
yeah,
it almost gives them house money. They've beaten Denver enough. So now it's like, we're missing one of our key guys. House money.
For sure.
So that one's a big one to me for Denver. If you go after that, the Lakers holding on versus Memphis, both of those teams feel like a bit of a mystery box. And then you have the Warriors. Is there any chance the Warriors can get hot enough to climb up to like a 4 seed here? They're only 2 games back of the Lakers.
That the Warriors can? An outside chance. But I think the Lakers the other night, that was an important moment for them in the way they played against Memphis because they had struggled. LeBron had not played great since he came back from the groin injury. And it felt like the other night that was more like the team that I watched when they started rolling before LeBron's injury. So I think ultimately I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt to Luka and LeBron over Golden State and Memphis. And I think the Lakers are going to hold on to 4.
Here's what's interesting. Golden State's next 2 games at Memphis, at the Lakers. You win both of those games and you might have caught up just right there with 5 games to go. So the schedule really is shaking out to be kind of interesting. I feel like something funky is going to happen. My hunch would be that it's Memphis that falls in the standings and maybe Golden State climbs up to number 5. But I just think something's going to happen where one of these teams is going to end up significantly different than where they are right now. And then, of course, go ahead.
Golden State's they're going to determine everything in the next 4 games. They've got at Memphis, at the Lakers. You just mentioned those 2.
Yep.
Then they go Denver, Houston at home.
Yep.
two teams playing for a ton. Those two teams are locked trying to get into the 2 spot. After that, at Phoenix, San Antonio, at Portland, Clippers last game of the year, which the Clippers could be playing for a lot there. But those other 3, I mean, you just absolutely have to win those 3 games. So really, the Warriors want to have a shot. It's going to take place in the next 4 games. If you want to know legitimately, is this possible for them to get into the 4?
Yeah. And then Minnesota and the Clippers are tied right there, right behind them. Again, 1 game. So both of those teams have a chance to climb even out of the play-in. And then
Minnesota's going to finish. Minnesota's going to get 7, though, I think, because their strength of schedule is 28th.
Yeah, it's pretty easy.
They've got an easy road the rest of the way.
They got this Denver game, which is one of their last remaining tough games, at Milwaukee, at Memphis, and then the rest of them are teams that have punted on their season. So they have 4 gimmies and 4 games that they can be competitive in. And if they get 2 out of those 4, finish the year 6-2, that'd be strong. So I'm with you. I think, but you said 7 seed. They're 1 game back of Golden State, 2 games back of Memphis. I think there's a chance Minnesota sneaks out at the last second and climbs all the way up to 6. You got the Clippers firmly there as well, number 8. And then behind them, Dallas and Sacramento. The Suns are 2 games back. And from what I've seen on them, I'm going to say that I think they're out of this. But Dallas, to me, would be a very compelling 9 seed.
The Phoenix Suns, they got me once. They're not going to get me again. Yeah. They're not going to get me again. They're not going to get me again. No. It was like, they were completely undressed. And now you're like, all right, man, it's how are you going to pick yourself up off the mat now? How? Yeah. Especially with the Durant. We haven't gotten any news on that yet. Who knows what that's going to mean? And just the lack of resolve over the last 3 games to look like this, it matters. No, I'm not. I don't see any way that's happening. So you get Dallas and Sac at 9-10. Dallas has now won 4 out of 5. So like they're all of a sudden they've become, and now they can't get any higher than that. Those 2 teams are 6 games back. So it's 9-10, those 2 teams. Unless you think Phoenix has a shot, which you and I both don't. It's Dallas, Sac, take your pick. Who's going to finish higher? And the way Dallas is playing right now, since getting 80 back, I'd put Dallas in the 9 spot.
So I love Dallas winning the 9 spot. And then the loser of any of Memphis, Golden State, Minnesota, LA, the Clippers, any of those teams that happen to be in the play, and one of them will have to lose. And I just love Dallas. Like, not that this can save their season. The season has been very straight, very, very bizarre in a million different ways. But it would be a nice consolation to get to play spoiler and go into that game, the final play-in game for who's going to get the 8 seed, and have a chance to knock off a team like the Clippers, the Timberwolves, the Warriors, or the Grizzlies, who've had these great years, and you could sneak in at the end and play spoiler. And by the way, to me, it's on the table. That's a tough team to game plan for, especially with 1 night prep. We haven't seen them a lot fully healthy. They're huge. They play a unique style, and I love them getting the opportunity to play the spoiler in that spot. I hope it happens. All right,
we'll see.
Yep. We'll see. Let's get out of here with a quick super chat. What do we have here, James? Dennis says, Legs, I knew you were a great shooter from the pod, but how in the heck did you shoot 52% from 3 in a season? Love the show. Keep doing what you do.
As Adam would say, I got on a heater. And it lasted for 7 months. That's all I can tell you. Actually, yeah. Listen, man, the previous year kind of set that up. I shot 52% in Golden State the year before, but it only in like half a season because I joined them mid-season. That kind of set the stage for that year. That was a big year for me before I got to Washington. And then you know what it was? We had great dominant low post players, man. And we the league was different. The ball went into the post. Those guys drew double teams. Ball came out. And I was always positioned in the right spot to get that look. So that's really, I give a lot of credit to those guys. Juwan Howard, Chris Webber, Rasheed Wallace, like those guys had a lot to do with that.
Hey, Rasheed Wallace, so underrated, man. He's a heck of a player. Hit that outro music, James. You have the results of a poll. I didn't even know you did a poll. What do you have a poll here? Are the Warriors better with Kuminga? Nope. Time to move on. 58%. Yeah, 41%. So most people are with me. They think that the team is just better.
Man, I wonder how many times Adam voted in this poll to get that number up to 58%. You're only allowed 1 vote, Adam.
I like
no
Kuminga,
Christmas card from the Kuminga family to Adam. I can tell you right now.
Hey, the Warriors just look like the Warriors when he's not out there. Mark Cooper at the buzzer has one. He says, more legs on games. When's your next game? What do you got this week?
All right, so I'll fill you in on that. So I got Wednesday night, Detroit, Oklahoma City. Very excited about that. That was a game they flexed. We replaced New Orleans at the Clippers with that game. So I'm very excited about that. And then I have a game, I'll have a little bit of a break. I'll have a game the last day of the regular season to be determined. We're going to try to find the 2 best games that day. I'll get one of those games with a lot of implications if it's the last day of the season. And then you guys are going to see me a ton in the first couple rounds of the playoffs. I'll probably call 8 to 10 playoff games over the first 2 rounds once we know the matchups.
Hopefully here in Denver so we can do the show live.
Yeah, there's a good chance. There's a good chance of that, man.
Everybody put your fingers crossed. Everybody, thanks so much for hanging out with us. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever it is. And make sure you're subscribed to this very show. It helps us out. Hit that like button. We'll see you tomorrow.
We all silly like the mayor.